Hello and welcome to Mystic Visions. This is a monthly tarot card reading for the month of March, and this one is for Scorpio. So if you're a Scorpio, we're going to do a Celtic cross for you. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. If you are a subscriber, if you would like some extra cards to be drawn for you, please just ask me in the comments and I'll be happy to do that for you. And let's go ahead and get started with your reading for Scorpios. Okay, so okay, Scorpio. So what we have for you is which one is this here? The Five of Swords, but in the reversed. Okay, so normally the Five of Swords upright would mean a kind of an argument, something that you had a difference of ideas, and you may have said some things or got caught up in that argument and said some things that you really didn't mean to and hurt somebody or something like that. But in the case of it being upright, I kind of think this tends to mean that you are possibly in a place where like you don't want to argue, or you are, another possible interpretation would be that you don't want to apologize, that you think you're right. Okay, so not wanting to argue can be in two kind of directions: either that you trying to keep the peace, or you feel like you're absolutely right and there's no arguing with you, right? And you're absolutely unable to negotiate that or debate that, right? So in one way or another, there's kind of a unwillingness to argue here. Now, what you have for what's crossing you is the Seven of Cups. Seven of Cups means there's possibly a lot of choices that are presented to you. And the idea here is that all of these things are kind of a trap. So usually when this comes up, my best advice to somebody is think about, do you need any of this, or are you kind of maybe searching for something that's unnecessary, something that you don't really need? Is it an option to say like none of the above, and to instead maybe focus on some other aspect of your life, or to just hold off until a better option presents itself? Because there's a lot of people tend to be self-serving and will try to convince you to take a particular path, but in reality, it's like none of these paths are really looking out for your best interest. Now, what you have in your past, what you're moving away from, is the Lovers card. And the Lovers, it's not necessarily so much about like a perfect relationship or something like that. It really kind of refers more to a choice, and in regards to the Lovers, they can be as perfect for each other as ever, but at some point that love is not, we'll say, realized or revealed until they actively make a choice to maintain it, right? So is it a stronger, better love to never ever have to make a sacrifice and to always feel like it's easy? Or is it a stronger love to want to quit but not to, right? But to stick it out even though sometimes you do want to quit, right? So, and I'm not going to answer that question for you. That is, of course, something that you're going to have to find out on your own. That's a reason this is a card in the deck, right? Otherwise, it would just be common sense. But yeah, in my experience, it's been, there's an extra little layer that comes from having to actively make the decision to commit to something, to choose something. And that is what separates one type of relationship from another. And again, I'm not going to clarify which types, but you're moving away from this aspect of choice. This is in the past. So, it's not necessarily that you're moving away from that relationship that's implied by this card. It's not even necessarily a relationship, but you've either put that behind you, you've already made that decision, you're not worried about that, but this is something that did happen in the recent past that you're kind of moving away from. Now, it also could mean that you've left whatever this commitment is, that you chose not to make that commitment, and you're moving away. However that applies to you will be up to you. This is a general reading, so it's going to apply to everybody in a slightly unique way. But what we have for your future, or what you're moving toward, is the King of Swords in the reverse. Now, this can indicate, the King of Swords is a very intellectual type of person. He's a thinker. He's very smart, even a genius. But he is in the reverse in this situation, meaning there could be some arrogance, or thinking that you know everything, or kind of abusing other people with your intellect, right? So this is kind of what's in your future. Now, does that mean that somebody is going to be doing that to you, or does that mean you're doing that to somebody else? That I can't tell you. That is, again, up to your personal interpretation. Now, if you're a person who'd never do that, then you can pretty safely assume that this is some other person that's coming into your life. But in some way or another, and the way that I would stitch this together into somewhat of a narrative here is that this Seven of Cups here, if a lot of people are kind of vying for your attention, they're trying to get your attention, it's a good bet. I'm sure some of them have somewhat of a good motive deep down somewhere, but a lot of these people are very much self-serving, and they have ideas of themselves that are not necessarily in line with what you might think of them. So there could be some ego issues going on, or something like that. So you're going to want to be careful looking out for that. Now, what you have for the foundation of the situation, which is kind of like, what is the universe trying to teach you through this situation? What's going on here, really? Because it has been a little bit confusing with what you have up here for your past and your future. But what you have going on here is the Eight of Wands. Now, in this card, you've got your 8 little wands here that are crashing toward the ground really quickly. There's this kind of energy of like, what's going on here? And that's exactly what it's meant to convey, is kind of like a surprise, or sometimes things are very unpredictable. So this kind of goes back to this nature of choice. You have to be able to not only think your way through things or pay attention, but you have to be able to use your intuition. But you also have to come to a point where there's no good reason for you to decide to commit to something. You just want to do it. And if you can find somebody else who kind of feels that same way, well, then that's really a formula for a lasting relationship, or a lasting endeavor. If you're talking about like something that you want to do, a project or something, if you can just find something that you're willing to commit yourself to, even though sometimes you don't really feel like doing it, then that's got a higher chance of success, right? And with me, that's the tarot cards right now for me. I love reading the tarot cards, but there is a lot going on in my life, and sometimes it's difficult to devote myself to it. But I've, made somewhat of a commitment, and, even if I'm a little bit later than I would like getting some of these videos out, I've chose to still do it. And it's not necessarily even about the reward. It's just thinking about how much good I've gotten out of the tarot cards, and, committing myself to them because I'm trying to, do the same for somebody else, or to help somebody else if I can, because it's the least I can do, right? Now, for the way that this relates to your foundation, there's gonna be some hardships, some obstacles. So making a kind of a selection in this case, when you have like all these options presented to you, is not necessarily about finding a perfect option or finding an option that's not going to come with any kind of drawbacks. It's really more about recognizing that all of these choices come with consequences. And so, I would almost choose like a known negative consequence rather than an unknown negative consequence, because sometimes what you're not seeing is a lot more problematic than what you are being able to see openly. But it's tough. It's a tough decision to make for sure. Now, what you have in your crowning thoughts is this 5 of coins in the reverse. So this means that the 5 of coins in the upright normally means that you're in need of some assistance, some help, but you're not really seeking it, or you're not aware that help is available for you. In the reverse position, it's kind of the inverse of that. So you are seeking help. You are thinking about needing some input, and that's probably why you're here watching this video. So I'm sure it's not very comforting for me to tell you none of the above. But sometimes it can be, if you're really not sure what you want to do or where you want to go, or what you want in general, it can be because you already have it. So that's something that you really should strongly consider here. If you are feeling pressured to make a choice, even though none of these choices is really obvious or really jumping out at you, you might be forcing it a little bit, and there may be, no real imperative for you to make a choice here. You may be whole and complete yourself. Now, if that's the case, if you are whole and complete, then that can change the reasoning for which you're making a decision in this situation. Does that make sense? Let's see. You've got if you're seeking after something, you have a need that you're trying to fulfill. And if you're trying to fulfill that need, if somebody's clever enough, they can figure out that you have that need, and they can kind of parade it in front of you, and they can say, look here, I got this. This can fulfill your need, but they're not showing you this other hand. What's in that other hand? You know what I mean? What's behind their back? And that can be what's problematic. So going into a situation like that, you're at a disadvantage if you're feeling this need for something. So the idea here is if you can, first of all, feel complete and whole with yourself and feel like you don't need to make a decision, then you're able to make a decision that benefits you instead of chasing after your desire, which is kind of a way of getting into a trap, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, your advice card here, you have the Death card. Don't be scared. The Death card is not necessarily like a bad omen or anything like that, or a literal indication of death. But what it does mean is that your advice here is to kind of like give up your previous way of thinking and to kind of be reborn into a new way of thinking or a new thought of how you want to handle this situation. And I think I pretty well just described kind of what that might look like, about instead of feeling as though a decision needs to be made, approach the situation from a perspective of you don't need anyone or you don't need anything. You're fine, you're whole the way that you are, and things can be. And it can be hard to see that sometimes. Sometimes you really feel as though there's a need, and there very well may be a need. So the it's not about pretending that the need is not there, so to speak, but it's more of if you're making the decision from that headspace, from that place of almost like desperation, then it's very difficult for you to get a fair shot at making the right decision. So it's really about approaching it from a place of abundance and a feeling of like you don't have to make a decision, so that you're making a better decision for you. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's what you're kind of trying to do, and that's what that Death card is really all about, is leaving the old you behind, letting it die, and being reborn a new way, with a new type of thinking, a new paradigm. And so what you have in your environment is the Four of Wands. Four of Wands is happy, family, home energy, or if not family, home energy. This could be roommates. This can be, anything. But you have a happy home here, and you are. There's a lot of opportunity for contentment where you are. So that goes back to, again, you don't necessarily have to seek something in the external environment here. There is a lot of happiness just to be had from surveying what's already around you. So that's something that you can kind of cling on to there. Now, what you have for your Fears card is actually kind of similar to the Four of Wands, but it's the Three of Cups here. And that Three of Cups, this is friendship and fellowship. This is some good friends who are celebrating and all that. Now, in the Fears card, that's a little odd, right? Why would that be something to fear? Well, the way that I would look at it is you don't want that to be all you ever have. You don't want that to be the only thing. There's sort of maybe a one-dimensional nature to this. There's more to life than that, and it can be a somewhat immature stage of emotional fulfillment where everything's fine and everything's fun, but there is sort of a lack of difficulty, which I was talking about earlier, right? There with any really great choice that you end up making in your life, there's going to be some struggles that go along with that. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be worth it, right? So there's going to be something to give you that kind of contrast. Any teenager can have this, right? Anybody who's immature and, or not even teenager, grade school, you can have that. Anybody can have that. But it's more difficult to forge something rare, like a really great marriage or a business, or these things are a little bit more difficult to obtain, and there comes a time with maturity where you start to want something like that, which is a little bit more difficult to obtain than this simple stuff, right? Now, my personal advice, again, is don't turn your back on this. Utilize that as the platform for making decisions to move forward. Don't feel like you need to claw your way through life and achieve all these things at all costs. Sit back a little bit and chill. Tell yourself it's okay to be the way you are and to not have those things, and you'll be much more capable of achieving them. Just by calming down, Now, what you have for your overall message, or where you're headed in the long run, is this Three of Wands over here. And Three of Wands is, taking a step, making a move, or, getting off the couch. So the way I like to think about it is, like, let's say you want to go do something. You want to go on some kind of a journey. There is a stage where you're just sitting on the couch and you're not doing anything to go on that journey. And then maybe you plan that. And then, there's going on the journey. But in between there's an intermediate step that's actually very, very important. And that is the decision to actually act, to make the first step, right? And I love how the tarot kind of puts a magnifying glass on that one step, because I find it to be one of the most important and overlooked steps in anything that you do. You have to be able to make a first step, to do something, right? And oftentimes what really chokes us up, or what really distracts us, is it's like, if you're going to go mountain climbing, you don't know where to start. You don't know what to do. And not feeling like you're really good at making progress at something can be very discouraging, and it can cause you to set it down and not do it. So it's not important for you to finish the journey, but it is important for you to take that next step, to do that one next thing that you want to do, right? And so oftentimes this is a reminder to focus on baby steps, to not try to just go all the way right away, or to get frustrated because you're not all the way. But to think about, what is the smallest next step that I can take that guarantees me that I am going down the path I want to be going down, right? And this is where you're headed in the long run. So the way that I would say this is you're probably kind of spinning your wheels a little bit. And what I mean by that is you're probably trying a little too hard to make some things happen in your life. And the answer for you is to kind of to pump the brakes a little bit and to let things work out in a little bit more of a slow and deliberate fashion, and to become you're looking for quality and not quantity. You're looking to make more deliberate moves, and that way you're not wasting so much time on bad moves, right? Because you go down the wrong path, and then all of a sudden you find yourself having to start back at square one, and that takes a lot longer than if you just go kind of slow and steady from the beginning. So that's your advice. Take it or leave it, but please let me know in the comments what you thought about it, and I thought it was pretty good reading. And I'll see you guys next time for your next tarot reading. And thanks for watching, and have a great day.